freedom to create your own universe. You can just get obsessed, enamored by anything you want. You know, you're free to choose. You're free to be free, you know. You're free to be contracted even.
If the Sat Yuga to Kali Yuga is not linear and it's concentric, and what you were teaching us today about the waves coming out of the heart, which was very touching for me today, so thank you. And you talked about mapping the concentric circles over the top of the cascading disclosure of Shiva from his fullness to the individual. It would seem in some way that if the yugas are beyond space and time, and you're speaking of the heart, does the golden age exist currently, collectively, from our like bliss body moving out through those concentric circles to Kali Yuga, the food body, like is that what we're talking about? That there's actually a realm of the golden age that we're tapping into when we do this work, and that is not in the future that we're trying to get to. Is it actually here?
Well, pretty much so. There's nothing that is in the future, nothing that is in the past. As you have rightly put it, the whole concept of Manvantara, the concentric concept of time, is only experienced at this level of reality, where we are bound by the causation, all the spatial and other limitations. But in, let's say, subtler and more refined levels of reality, it is a very different picture. So indeed, this perspective can be seen here in exactly the same way. So that is why there is a possibility to live, let's say, one's own state of beatitude, irrespective of circumstances. Irrespective of circumstances. It is confirmed, it has been written, spoken, sung about, celebrated, elaborated, how that is. So, for example, in the darshanas, the concept of yuga is only relevant to the conversations up to the final, the culmination of the Vedas, summarized in the Advaita, Vedanta. From the point of view of Advaita Vedanta, there is no such thing. This whole concept of yugas collapses. There's no yugas. You see? Because the homogeneity of Brahman is now being installed. That's the whole expose of the darshanas, of the 6 systems of Indian philosophy. So once we come from all these, starting from inference, enumeration, in the earlier, let's say, expositions of Nyaya and Vaisheshika, and comes to Samkhya and Yoga, right? The metaphysical view of reality and the verification of that directly through yoga, so that union can be savored, experienced, verified. The teaching is there, but now it's verifiable. And finally, karma, mimamsa, in junctures, how to, culminating in Vedanta. Vedanta is the culmination. They call it end of the known. Vedanta. But the correct way among the scholars to speak about it is culmination. So darshanas culminate. So therefore they can be seen as that loop of knowledge. And that's where the knowledge culminates. And what the end is the end of the division created by the trinity of seer, seeing, and seen. That's what is here spoken of as the end of the Vedas, the end of the known. So I'm just bridging now here, frivolously, these two systems, because we can do that. Known in the equilateral structure of the seer, seeing, and seen, or the Shiva, Shakti, Nara. Known is the world, is the individual. So that's the end of the individual, the end of the world. That's what it means, the end of the known. Why? Because in the first place, known is the knower. There is no such thing as known independently from the knower. When that is realized, one is free, completely and utterly. Maybe little reminder there and then required, self-reminder. But that's what it is. That what caused separation, that what caused this rupture between subject and object, is completely and utterly and entirely reconciled. See? So that's why it is called the end of the known, Vedanta. And we're giving this kind of additional perspective, looking how it is all stitched together from the other side by utilizing tantric understanding of the Trikashaivism, so as to what was illustrated earlier becomes clearly handy. So from Vedanta point of view, there is no such thing. That it's useless to talk about yugas. Just as it is useless to talk about karma, useless to talk about reincarnation and all the rest of it. Because what is being installed is the supremacy of Brahman. That's all. All non-dual scriptures are only exalting the state of Brahman. So whether this is Brahma Sutras, or whether this is Ashtavakra Gita or Vashishta Yoga or Viveka Chudamani of Adi Shankara, that is being hammered over and over and over and over until it becomes so ingrained, just as ingrained in the sense of, like the Sufis say, that's one can pray as much as one wants, but unless the name of God, in this case, Allah, is engraved on one's heart, all this is futile. So the Sufis, this analogy, see? So the hammering here is to make sure it's engraved. So it cannot be forgotten. See? When something is engraved, even if you go blind, you can touch it and will serve you as a reminder. So much about the yugas. And yes, it's very, very perceptive of you to allocate this also with the way how the subtle and the gross and the rest of it. Because manvantaras can also be superimposed on that as well. In other words, Sat Yug is that what the true state of affairs, right? That's the true state of affairs. And in that continues descending, at some point the sacrifice becomes at a price, I could say. And this price is very heavy. This price is unconscious. So it's like, okay, what do I do now? Well, you know what you do. Imagine for a moment what power it takes for that what is beyond imagination, comprehension, to just experience itself as this completely, utterly, entirely contracted individual. And yet, at the very same paradoxical time, it is nothing other than that, minus those, what Kanchukas here, self-coverings, because it has to be. Let's speak about it more in the coming days so that we understand. Because people sometimes, well, if I'm realized, enlightened, why cannot I be like Shiva in the sense of this complete and utter omnipresence? Well, because you are in the body. You are experiencing all this through the body, through the instrumentality of the body, which is the body of awareness, consciously taking that so as to have that very unique, extraordinary perspective. That sheer power is equal to the very power that is accompanied by awakening, so as to, as it were, return the state or the status of the Shivahood. See? So this is, we can speak about it, that power of contraction is now equal to the power of expansion. In a way, it makes perfect sense, is it not? So that same power that is responsible for this ultimate contraction, that same very power is required for the release of that contraction. That is Tantra. This is the process. And to what degree, how, each to their own, can enter the field of speculation unnecessarily. But once freedom is lived, then the freedom is truly there. Freedom to create your own universe. You can just get obsessed, enamored by anything you want. You know, you're free to choose. You're free to be free. You know, you're free to be contracted even. Yeah. Because this is the state of freedom. I want to just do this, you know. This is why the behavior and there's no logic in the enlightened being whatsoever. No logic in the way they are. If you want to find logic in their behavior, you are in for trouble. Because it's completely another modus operandi. You see? Because that's what it is. Freedom is freedom. Lack of that is its total opposite. Lack of that freedom is then expresses itself as a continued and constant set of binding circumstances. You see? The situation does not change at all, but the experience is radically different. Not particularly at all, in any way, in any manner, was never influenced, was actually the opposite of that. But it's quite fun. And since I'm quoting, I'm not swearing, right? So it's quote. So, still shit still happens, but it just smells less. It's Ken Wilber. So it's like that, maybe. I don't know. That's maybe how he tried to put it. So that is very, very valid inquiry with regard to the concentric nature of time, which, by the way, is not spoken in terms of illusion. This is an interesting perspective that whereas time is being often, it's an illusion. Well, in Vedic thought, time is not an illusion. Time itself is the domain of Kali. There is nothing that, in tantrically speaking, that is illusion. Nothing. Maya itself is greatest Shakti, worshipped by yogis. Why? Even the greatest of yogis who have total and utter realization of identity with Shiva, still under the domain of Maya Shakti. So they worship her out of respect. See? This is lofty perspective, spiritual, esoteric perspective, true understanding. So the entire creation, the entire manifestation throughout all its spheres is seen as the manifestation of the matrika. So therefore, there's nothing that is here spoken in a dismissive sense, certainly not time. So maybe Einstein didn't quite get it when he dismissed time as an illusion. But there is a not so well-known Russian scientist today who set to disprove it some 10 years ago, maybe more. Have you heard the name Smolin? Have anyone have heard that name? I don't, you know.
I've heard it, but I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. I forgot his first name, maybe Alexander. Smolin. He wrote a book. And that book got my attention at the time, paradoxically enough, pun is not intended, but at the time when I wanted to speak about the value of time in terms of spiritual discourse. And this book was published about 10 years ago, maybe 12, where he gave to scrutiny these ideas, perspectives on dismissing time as an illusion. Interesting, very, very interesting. See, tantrically speaking, in Vedic tradition, time is the domain of Kali. And Kali is a supreme Shakti, supreme goddess, right? So Kali is that. It's time and space. It's a domain of the field, domain of, she rules over the electromagnetism. So we spoke about planets emitting electromagnetic waves. And our heart emits electromagnetic waves, just as Jupiter and Sun. Our hearts emit the most refined electromagnetic waves. So therefore, Kali, seat is in the heart. Bhairav is the chamber down there, Kali in the heart, and all the lunar qualities of the Shaktis, Saraswati and so on, Sundaris, in the domain of the heaven, lunar realm. So that's also, see, time is experienced in the heart. And timelessness is experienced in the heart.